Welcome to SEC Football Live here from the 440 Sports Network on the 440 Sports YouTube page and everywhere you get your podcasts. I know we've been off for a little while on the podcast feed, so welcome back. That is Chris Childers, and I am Braden Gall. You can get to me on the Twitter machine or whatever social media app you still think is entertaining, Chris, at Braden Gall. What about you, buddy? Where can people find you?
At Childers Radio on Twitter, and that's really all or X or whatever it's called. That's really all I engage with nowadays. I think they're all stupid and mind-numbing and bad for the soul and bad for mental health. But I guess in our world, we got to do it. So X is my preferred.
Twitter.com, the artist formerly known as. So
yes,
if you want to jump into the comments, we will take questions. We know we've not been on for a little while here, and so I understand if you've been missing the pod, I apologize. We've got a very big plan for you guys coming up this season, so we are back now for the remainder of the season. I've got we'll have a schedule, and of course the new co-host Chris. You've been hanging out with me all summer. I do appreciate you, man. Make sure you check out Full Ride on SiriusXM, and of course you can check him out all over like every other channel too across the platform as well.
Whenever somebody's on vacation, pretty much, I've kind of said, hey, I'll take whatever hours you have. So I've been getting calls, which has been good. But it's kept me busy.
Yep. Well, we do appreciate you hanging out this summer, man.
Good to be here.
It's been great to do some work with you this summer. But we will have some plans, so stay tuned for that. We'll be back on the podcast feed and back weekly on the YouTube as well. Make sure you give us a thumbs up over there. And if you are watching on Facebook or Twitter, please share the product right now. Give us a retweet. Let people know that they can come hang out. We're going to talk SEC football for the remainder of this hour, roughly speaking, or so. And we've got official predictions to make, but sort of like in the way that you and I like to do them, not just sort of like the same old, same old. We will pick the championship game and who makes the playoffs. But I also want to know like who's going to be the name that takes over the conference. It feels like in the SEC we've had a guy, Joe Burrow, Jayden Daniels, Johnny Manziel, Tim. Like there's guys that just take over our consciousness. And there's so many different options this year. I want to know who you've got. I'm interested in what units you think will be most important. That's right. Chris's most important units in college football.
I like that.
In the SEC. I can't wait to hear about your units, Chris. So we'll do that. Again,
I feel like that goes right along with the game in Ireland this weekend, sponsored by Aer Lingus.
It's very close to being inappropriate.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Very close to being inappropriate.
But it's not.
Teams that will exceed expectations, teams that will be looking for new coaches at the end of the year. We're going to put all of our picks in an official, like we're going to chisel them into stone. We'll come back and revisit them at the end of the year and see how wrong we were, or maybe we get something right, but we'll see. So lots of stuff to do today on the show. Quickly, I got a couple of short news nuggets here I want to get to with folks because we haven't been on for a while. The AP poll is out. Like all different things have happened since the last time we hung out. I want to ask you one very random question that I did not prepare you for, but I know you have to do so much content just like me in the summer months, and we are all ready for football to happen. And so I am curious. I would like to know what was the most obnoxious, most annoying storyline of the entire summer. It could be a player, it could be a team, it could be an off-the-field issue. It could be what was the thing that right now, with about a week and a half to go, you are effing tired of talking about? What is the storyline that's just...
Oh, for me, I'm tired of talking about the house settlement. I mean, I think that's the most annoying thing. It's a necessary evil and we have to do it, and it's gonna direct us into a new course of life. But that has been something we've talked about ad nauseum, and we haven't really gotten into any football until like 2 weeks ago, because there's been, we call it the lawsuit limbo. There's always somebody suing the NCAA. Somebody's, trying to make a buck, and probably will, because the NCAA's just got no leverage and no power. And I think that has annoyed the living piss out of me. I miss the days when, like you and I were on Rivals Radio and the entire summer was about the preseason, all of it. I mean, It was literally just the build to the game, to the first week, and it felt like this massive crescendo. I feel grossly underprepared for week one. I'm not even kidding, because we haven't talked about it. We've been so into the minutia, so into the nonsense of all the changes off the field that it's kind of fun. Maybe even more fun than normal to get back into the football aspect of it.
So along those lines, like just imagine, because we got week 0 coming up this Saturday. So there's one interesting game that actually does impact the SEC in theory. If you're paying attention to playoff spots, which is now a thing you have to do for every game in every conference. I mean, the Miami offensive line is one of the best in college football. They're not a particularly well coached team necessarily, but they have a very skilled offense around a very talented offensive line. I don't know, could be a really fun thing to talk about and look forward to playing against the Florida Gators defensive front that's been rebuilt in the swamp in week 1. Sounds pretty fun. Like, that's an example of something I am now excited about. Thank you.
Yeah.
My pants are tighter.
I'm really excited about that, actually. I met Mario Cristobal for the first time, I think 3 weeks ago. It was ACC Media Days, and he, have you been around him ever? He's a scary guy.
He's not a small man.
No, he's like Frank Martin. Like, Frank Martin, the ex-coach of South Carolina basketball that just had that like mob mentality.
Well, he was a bouncer,
Well, do you know Cristobal's background?
I mean, some of it. He
interviewed and got a job out of college with the Secret Service.
That's right.
Seriously. So like this guy, maybe not a great clock manager, but if you need to protect the president, that guy's got you down.
Well, we might
they need those. Yeah, they need Cristobal. He's a big lumbering man. Yes. I hope he's found somebody to fix that element, because he's done it twice now. He's given away a game. He cannot manage a clock at the end. He's good at a lot of other things. Clearly developing an offensive line is one of them.
Great recruiter,
but that's not his strength, is managing a game. So hopefully he's gotten somebody to help him with that. That's a hell of a fun game, though.
It's going to be great.
I mean, the stakes are monumental, and I know you love Graham Mertz, so that'll be kind of fun. Yeah.
Like, not on a personal level, but like,
but Cam Ward versus Mertz will be a fun match.
It's way better than anyone realizes.
Way better.
Steven says, billable hours remain undefeated. That is exactly
it's correct. A good time to be a lawyer in this country.
So a couple of things here. We've got an Ole Miss defensive lineman, Xavier Harris, who played 11 games, 6'7", 320, blocked 3 kicks last year. This is a big part of why Ole Miss could make a playoff run or even win a game or two in the playoffs, and we'll get to your picks in a second, is the talent in the front seven. He is technically a returning starter. He was charged with and arrested with domestic violence over the weekend. Reminder, DUI and a felony fleeing the police last July. So potentially a pattern of behavior here, and not, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Lane Kiffin hasn't commented, but it's worth noting because Ole Miss, if they're going to be good, has to be great in the front seven. If they want to contend with Georgia's and Ohio States of the world, they're going to have to be good there. So any piece that they lose, whatever you think of off the field stuff, like, I'm not here to rail on that, but at the end of the day, like, these are some stupid decisions that could affect Ole Miss's chance to win games. Bama's general manager, Courtney Morgan, has the highest contract ever for a front office executive in college football. $825,000. I'd expect that to go up real fast.
It's going to go way up. We talked about this earlier today. I'm curious how you feel about it. Let's talk about this, because we, look at the NFL, and the NFL is clearly a great model for where we should be going. It's already set up. It makes sense. It certainly, it's just dumb that we like, hey, there it is. Let's just go do that, and it'll make a lot of sense. What's interesting to me is, like, you think about, I'm a Bears fan, and right now Ryan Poles, the GM, is all that anybody's talking about.
You're very excited right now.
There's a lot of excitement. Yes, there's a lot. I'm sure it'll end in failure, like always, but there's at least reason to feel good about the athleticism at quarterback. But Ryan Poles is getting all the credit. I believe that we'll have a similar model in college football where the general manager will be every bit as equal as the head coach and what they mean to the team and success. And I think the money, like for Courtney, if he's the best one, and Kalen DeBoer said, hey, I had this guy at Washington, I know the value of him, I got to keep him, I got to beat out USC who wanted him. If he's worth that to you, then he's worth his weight in gold. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. And look, I've been around I cover the Titans as well here locally, and having been around their sort of new front office structure, which is Rand Carthon took over as the GM last year, and now he's sort of officially built his own front office, where he's got Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson and these guys who are running like different departments in analytics and spinning up different types of nutritional departments. Like, this is all the stuff that has been sort of under the head coach in college football for a long time. And I think what we're going to see is sort of a separation of obligation and stress. And because right now, what are all these old?
It's too much.
What are all these old head? Yeah, what are all these old head coaches complaining about, and why are they quitting our sport? Why is the brain drain happening? It's too much roster management. You need a department to handle that. So I do think 820. I think within 3 years, we are going to look at $825K
and laugh at
for a front office general manager in college football and laugh our asses off. I think so.
I agree.
It is worth noting. Florida State, Georgia Tech this weekend. Of course, the reason you might want to pay attention if you're an SEC fan, not only is football back, but Florida State is a team, and this is one of the more legitimate football games we've had in week 0. We've had a few like Northwestern Nebraska and Illinois Nebraska games that have been close, but I think Florida and Miami played on a week 0 game back in 2019. That was like a legitimately important football game. But Florida State and the ACC, like, there's a chance they could get a second team into the playoff, but they're going to have to be perfect if they do that, which means Florida State can't lose a game like this to a kind of a feisty Georgia Tech team. They're only an 11-point favorite, completely rebuilt week 0. So again, those are the types of games. Notre Dame, Texas A&M is another one in week 1. For example, if you are an SEC fan, Tennessee, LSU, Missouri, and you don't know if you're going to get into the playoff, you need Notre Dame to lose a game or two because, and maybe that's bad because Texas A&M catapults itself maybe, but you got to start paying attention to games like this. You need losses to pile up for teams like Notre Dame and Florida State if you want to get your team into the playoff at the end of the year.
And it could. I mean, I think that game with Florida State and Georgia Tech is dangerous for Florida State. They're breaking in a brand new quarterback that has had mixed results. I mean, at Clemson, he was certainly underwhelming and got replaced. Went to Oregon State, was solid. Had great moments. Had some moments where he looked like DJ Uiagalelei, where he would turn the ball over and fumble and throw interceptions and do things that he tends to do. I like the quarterback on the other side in this game. I think Haynes King has... I mean, that's a kid that won the Texas A&M job twice and just couldn't stay healthy. But he stayed healthy last year, played really well. Yeah. When I mentioned I was at ACC Media Days, I didn't get to go to the fun one in Dallas, but I did go to the one in Charlotte, which is still cool. It's cool to a certain degree.
They're sort of different. I'm not gonna lie. I've watched too much news the last couple of weeks. Like, media days are basically political conventions.
Yeah, for the conference. It's a propaganda.
Everyone's like, woo, we're great.
Yeah, it's a propaganda session. And, you know, the ACC strung it out for 4 days. They pulled an SEC and made sure everybody was miserable.
They had to give Stanford. They had to get Stanford and SMU time to get across the country. So it is what it is.
That was insane. They flew commercial.
You're kidding me?
No. Stanford and Cal flew commercial.
If you want to see a greater indication of financial disparity in our game, man.
And it was during the Delta stuff. So they were supposed to get out at like 5, and I think they didn't leave till like 11 p.m. And that flight's long. So I think they got in at like 4 in the morning. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, you guys are Cal and Stanford, for God's sakes. You don't have somebody with a jet that can bring your asses back.
Dude, Zuckerberg's right down the road. What are you?
I know. Doing? I mean, you know, seriously, it's insanity. Anyway, I forget what I was. Oh, anyway, Florida State and Georgia Tech. I think Haynes King is a better quarterback. I think DJ's got a lot to prove. And when I was at Media Days, one of the Florida State kids I was talking to, when I asked him about this game, I said, well, you guys got a pretty good opponent week 1. And he kind of looked at me and was shaking his head. And I was like, what, you don't think so? He's like, nah. Not really.
Bulletin board.
And I was like, oh no, like they're
they're
already believing that they're the greatest thing since sliced pickles because of last year.
Andrew says, I like Georgia Tech to cover and sneaky like them to win.
Yeah,
I don't know if I like them to win, but I do agree with you. Haynes King had one of the more underrated and underappreciated seasons of anybody in college football last year. Huge production on the ground and through the air. He is going to be dangerous to watch. Mike Norvell is going to have to do some work, all those new pieces and stuff. So it should be very interesting.
Are you as obsessed with? I guarantee you're not, but I'm so into this game just because it's being played in Europe, and we've made this a trend in recent years. And you know me, I'm a weird guy, and I've made a lot of friends with people in the United Kingdom through whatever different weird channels.
Bunch of blokes.
Yes. George Somerville. I don't know if you met him in Dallas. He does a podcast called The College Chaps, and he flew from London. Commissioner Sankey gave him a shout out. And he and I had a meeting yesterday. I've had him on my show a couple times, and he hooked me up with this other guy who's in Manchester who writes for this website in the United Kingdom called The Touchdown, and it covers American football. It's pretty cool, and it's pretty extensive. It's all amateur guys that just love the game in the United Kingdom. So and they're both going to the game. They're both going. They're going to game day. They're doing the whole thing. And they told me that we should expect the vast majority of the crowd to be European. There will be the Americans that have traveled, but this has become like something that they look forward to. They know where it's going to be. They know the stadium. They know in Ireland, Dublin's pretty easy to get to for a lot of these people. And Roger Goodell gets the lion's share of the credit because they committed. Yeah. They committed, and you've seen the growth.
Is sending Georgia
cool. Anyway.
Sending Georgia Tech and Navy and Florida State, is that like sending the Jaguars? Like, because you're not getting Ole Miss, Alabama.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
But the Jags have created an entire fan base out of it.
I know, but the Jags are, come on, like.
I know they're not like a minor league team in America. But what they figured out is because they can't get a fan base that cares about them here, they might as well spend all the resources there. And they've done that. They got this thing called Jag Tag, which is flag football.
All right.
80,000 kids are playing it in the United Kingdom right now.
Well, I might when me and my wife decide to move, I'll reach out and see if I can move the podcast to a different network.
so I'm guessing you don't care as much as I do.
No, I do, and I just
don't find it as interesting.
We're not going to
see international growth of the game.
Well, I mean, look, Packers Eagles are playing in Buenos Aires, in Rio.
My dream is to have Ohio State and Alabama play at Wembley Stadium someday. That's my dream.
Yes, it would be awesome. That would be great. I doubt that either of those programs allows that to happen, financially speaking. So we'll see. We'll see. Again, this is why the Jaguars have a fan base in London. All right, quickly, before we get to our predictions, injury report. And I was talking to somebody at a school this week about this. I don't think we've gotten any official term at time of taping. Yes, Tyler says Notre Dame went last year, but this is an SEC show, so we laugh at Notre Dame. No, I agree. Yeah. Notre Dame's a good brand, and so is Florida State. There's no question about that. I'm only tongue in cheek about this. Here's the thing. LSU and Florida did injury reports last year. The Big Ten did an injury report last year, but it was only 2 hours before kickoff, which serves absolutely no purpose to what the injury report is supposed to do, which is to protect student athletes from outside influence as it pertains to gambling and inside information. So what's going to happen, from what I understand, and I don't think this has been reported or official yet, so correct me if I'm wrong here, Childers, but the designations are going to be similar to the NFL from what I've heard. You're going to get questionable, doubtful, and out. You're going to get the same kind of thing. And you're going to get it probably on Tuesday, Thursday, and then maybe either Friday or Saturday morning. And you're going to get it early in the week because that is when gamblers want the information. And so you put out, Carson Beck is questionable on Tuesday, probable on Thursday. Then there's no pressure on any of the student athletes at Georgia to get that information to somebody who could use it to make money. So again, injury reports, it's not been finalized, but expect them to be a very real thing. And I would expect them to be a Tuesday, Thursday, maybe Saturday morning, or Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or maybe it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But just expect injury designations. You're not going to get any information about the specific injury. You're not going to get even upper body, lower body like the NHL. You are going to get like Carson Beck probable, and that's it. But that's more information than
we've ever had.
And it will help protect the student athletes. So we haven't been on in a while, and I did some digging on that, and I just want to point out, like, LSU did it fairly well last year, and Florida did a pretty good job. I think the Big Ten's model was wrong. Michigan not knowing if Jim Harbaugh was going to be their coach 2 hours before the game is kind of silly against Penn State, but didn't affect him. Sharon Moore just trolled James Franklin the entire time. So either way, I think it's very interesting. And again, to your point about looking to the NFL model, this is where we're going. So
yeah, absolutely where we're going. And it's necessary. I mean, if this is so mainstream, you and I live in Nashville. You mentioned that you covered the Titans. If you go to a Titans game, you'll see banners and billboards for BetMGM and the other sports books. They're everywhere. I mean, it is such a part now of the fabric of most states, and every billboard you drive by seems to have Jimmy Fox or whoever, JB Smooth promoting Caesars Sportsbook or something along those lines. So it is so in the mainstream. It is so commonplace now to bet on football. I think it's the only thing you can do to protect the integrity of the game and to protect the student athletes. It's not perfect, but it is a measure that I think, like Greg Sankey talks about it, he understands if this is going to be a thing, then we've got to do it the right way. And we've got to do everything we can so it doesn't create a massive problem.
You've got to protect one of the number one priorities of any sports league is to protect the integrity of the outcomes.
Yeah.
We can, there's off the field stuff, and there's athlete safety, and there's a billion, like you talked about, there's been litigation lawsuit limbo all summer. Like there's a million things that are complicated, but at the top of the list for a league is to make sure that the outcomes are legitimate. Like that's kind of at the top of the list. And so this is a better way to ensure some of that. So I'm looking forward to it. I think as someone who likes to dabble
it's good.
In gambling,
it's fun.
I'm a low stakes guy.
Me too.
I'm not a big stakes guy, but I enjoy it. And so like as do
you know what it is to
hundreds
me?
of millions of Americans.
It's like paying for the price of admission to the game. Like it's the price of entertainment for the day. Like I'll make, 10, 15 bucks or I'll lose 10, 15 bucks, but it's the price of admission to, go to watch the game at home and to have some sort of rooting interest if your team's not playing.
Well, I don't drink as much as I used to. I've been trying to get healthier, get in shape and such, getting older, et cetera, et cetera. But I used to go do these remotes, remotes with local radio. Like we used to go do these remotes on Saturdays at a local bar in East Nashville where I live. And we would say, they'd be like, yeah, you need to be there at like 11 and you're off at like 4 or whatever. And you get paid extra and then you probably get free food and drinks out of the deal. I would end up drinking like 5 or 6 beers on a Saturday. It was great. But if I wanted to do that now, all I'm doing is taking that 5 or 6 beers and I'm just going, all right, I'm just going to gamble with each one of those beers. And that's all it is.
That's your beer. That's
my beer money.
All
right.
Amstel Light or whatever.
20 minutes in, we'll get to our official predictions here on the show for the SEC. So I am curious. You were not at SEC Media Days. I've not talked to you about this. If again, talking about gambling right now, in the SEC championship game, who you got?
In the SEC championship game, I see the Texas Longhorns being involved, and I see the Georgia Bulldogs being involved in the SEC championship game. Texas, God bless them, man. They hit the lottery at the right time. They were downtrodden. I mean, whether it was Charlie Strong or Tom Herman or whatever, I mean, they were 7th in winning percentage in the Big 12. That's incredible.
You
right? For a program that makes more money than any athletic department in America, but it all aligned. It all aligned with the ruling in the Alston case. And once that moment happened, they were every Billy Bob and Bubba with a belt buckle and a gallon hat that oil baron could get involved. And now we, screw the fact that we're not getting the great offensive linemen. We're going to buy them, damn it. And we're going to use our oil money to do it.
They got good offensive linemen now.
They got great offensive linemen now. They've got 2 quarterbacks that they feel pretty good about. One of them, Quinn Ewers, was just featured in Fansville for Dr. Pepper. Hopefully works a little better than DJ Uiagalelei, but they got the quarterback. That's the face, right? I mean, those Fansville commercials are everywhere. So Texas is in a damn good spot, and Georgia's Georgia. Georgia's got the quarterback. Georgia's got the offensive line. Their cultural woes off the field don't seem to slow them down at all on the field.
Oh, no pun intended. Okay.
No pun intended at all, although maybe it should have been, but which is insane how we just keep talking about this over and over. And we had charges dismissed the other day and lessened, which I don't know how you're going to teach any lessons.
So you're saying full speed ahead for the Georgia Bulldogs?
Full speed ahead, full throttle. Yes, pedal to the metal for the Bulldogs. But I think it's those two. I think that's your championships. I think both quarterbacks, Beck and Ewers, will be Heisman finalists.
Well, to stick with the dad analogies, I will pump the brakes on the Texas Longhorns a little bit. I think Ewers is very good. I think the question is he elite? Is he Joe Flacco? As I've said on the show, is Quinn Ewers Joe Flacco?
You don't think so?
I don't know. I think I don't have questions about the offense, about the scheme, about the recruiting, about the culture. I don't. The schedule is much harder than people think. I think the question is Quinn Ewers has missed 5 games, 3 last year, 2 the year before, and that's when Texas has gotten into trouble. He's also not been that elite top flight guy. He's been very good, but he's never been the guy. And the question is, can he take that step? I actually don't have any doubts about how they replace all the pieces on offense. It's about replacing Byron Murphy. It's about replacing Tavondre Sweat, that 700-pound dude on the defensive line. And their secondary was their biggest concern last year already. So their defense, to me, is still kind of a question with a quarterback who's not like all-American number 1 type of good yet. He's very good. I have Georgia and Bama. That's what I voted on. I know that sounds boring. More things change, more things stay the same, et cetera, et cetera. Georgia, of course, has the fewest questions of any team maybe in America outside of Ohio State. And I just think Bama is, in the short term, they are better. Their offensive line is better. Their quarterback should be better. The offensive scheme is better. I think the supporting cast around Jalen Milroe is better. Sure, they lost a few pieces on the defense, but they're still pretty sick and loaded on the defensive side of the ball. They got a couple of tough road trips, but otherwise they get a couple of big games at home. I think they can beat Georgia at home. So I just think what's interesting, and here's my follow-up to this, is it easier for you to pick who makes the playoff or who makes the SEC championship game?
Playoff is easier.
I think it's easier.
Broader. It's a broader stroke now.
I agree.
I think you can kind of guess who's going to be 10-2, and 11-1, and possibly undefeated. But it's easier now. I think it's kind of a broader stroke. Figuring out who's in the SEC title game, I have no idea.
It's tiebreakers.
But I like Georgia, Texas. Yeah.
And I got Georgia, Bama. All right. So then my question would be, who is a lock for the playoff? Andrew says, I don't know, Bama at wide receiver and DB are very unproven. I would actually disagree on the DB thing. I think the DBs are going to be very, very good. They got an all-American safety back. They went into the portal and got guys. Receiver, we'll see. I think that's a valid complaint. But Kalen DeBoer has done nothing but develop receivers and quarterbacks. In the short term, I think they're better. In the long term, I don't know how you're better than Nick Saban, but that's a longer term question. I think the locks for the playoff, in my opinion, and I would guess you're going Texas. I think Georgia, Alabama are the only two teams that I have locked in. I could see Texas going 9-3, and I don't know if 9-3 gets you in. If you're going to broaden that who's a lock for the playoff and make it sort of a looser definition, then I might add Texas and Ole Miss to the group because I think that's the top four. But I'm just curious who because
I like Tennessee. I really
do. Lock? Not
a lock, but I think I like him as much as I like Ole Miss. I think Nico Iamaleava is going to be he's the guy that you asked, or you're going to ask me who's the guy that I think is going to be the player we talk about, and
that dude.
That's the guy. I mean, I think Nico Iamaleava is a special talent. I think he's an absolute star. They have recruited extremely well. Tennessee's got a lot of momentum. He's university, and I feel like nobody's talking about him. I feel like they're very under the radar this year, which I think is a blessing. I mean, no pressure. Joe Milton had his, okay year, wasn't spectacular, but I think they have a whole different level of quarterback that's stepping in. I think he's the guy that after that early game in Charlotte, we're kind of like, holy hell, this he's got something. Now, I don't think they're a lock. I think Georgia, I'd say Georgia, Bama, Texas. I'm with you on Alabama. I think they're playoff teams.
And so what's interesting is I had Tennessee, I think, much higher than the predicted finish at the media day official prediction, AP poll, and even Athlon Sports. I've got them at 5 in the conference, and I think the difference is
who's 4 to you?
I've got Ole Miss at 4, but that's based on yes, Andrew, I agree. NC State's a very real test. Tony Gibson, excellent defensive coordinator. That's a good, they develop players on that side of the ball. It's a neutral site game, but I expect a lot of NC State fans to be there, mostly Tennessee, but it's in Charlotte. But it's not a home game, and that's the key. And so it's his first true game, away from Neyland Stadium. He'll get a warm up start. But if they get by NC State and Oklahoma, and you're asking and then the next follow-up, because I think the locks are either 1, Georgia, or 3, Alabama, Texas, Georgia. I don't think you can say Ole Miss is a lock. I don't think you can say Tennessee or Missouri or LSU or any of these other teams are locks to get into the playoff. But hopeful.
I mean, certainly they feel like they have a shot going into the season.
But I mean, if the question also is who is that guy? Who is Johnny Manziel? Who's Jayden Daniels? Who's Joe Burrow? Who's the guy that just takes over the conference? That sucks up the oxygen because he is so good that no matter what game he's playing, you're watching, and is a Heisman caliber player. I think it's Nico, and I think it's Brady Cook. I think those two guys, and I think whichever one of them has the better season is the team that gets into the playoff. And then the other team is probably 9-3 or something like that. So
and Brady Cook's got, a stud muffin wide receiver at his disposal as a number 1 weapon that's going to create other opportunities for the offense. And Cook certainly can distribute. And how fun is that for Missouri just to be dreaming right now? I mean, they're in the mix here. We got a 12-team playoff, and they really legitimately have a chance to make the playoff.
Now,
that's cool.
We'll get in because I
don't know if they can win in the playoff, but they can get there.
Here's what's fascinating, and I've said this before all summer, and I think this is the more underrated part of the season that we have not yet sort of grappled with because we haven't faced it yet. And that is Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Missouri could all be 10-2 and have not played each other. And who gets into the championship game? Who gets into the playoff? Who does the committee value? I guarantee you Tennessee would have the best resume at that point. because they would have played Bama and Oklahoma and NC State in the non-conference and Georgia on the road and Florida, and Kentucky. Like Tennessee will have had the better schedule than Missouri and Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss has the best team. I think Missouri has the most volatility of the group. So I think at least one of not two of those teams are getting in. I'm not there with LSU. I'm not there with Oklahoma. I'm not there with A&M. But I think
that makes November pretty exciting.
It's going to be,
you know
awesome.
what I mean? Yeah.
You're
way better than it's been.
The games that you don't circle, again, Kentucky at Tennessee is a game that all of a sudden becomes a huge game.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many of those games on the Missouri schedule, the Ole Miss schedule, the Tennessee schedule. I think two of those three could get in. And I think Jackson Dart's another guy that could take over. I'm not there yet with him. I think Brady Cook is a little bit better. And I think Burden is better than Trey Harris. So I'm going to lean with Brady Cook on this, but I think it's Nico or Brady, and whichever one has the better game or two is going to get their team into the playoff, and they could be the guy that we're all talking about. I almost went.
I think it's Nico. I really do.
I almost went Luther Burden just because I think he's going to be the number one receiver off the board. And
I'm excited for Brew White and Squirrel.
Brew McCoy and Squirrel White. Yeah, there you go. He tried to get all excited there.
Brew McCoy. I just wanted to say Squirrel with Squirrel White. He's got a nice little cast around him. I just think Tennessee's underrated, man.
The offensive line's good.
And I'm no Tennessee blowhard. You know that.
I know.
I know. I'm not a Vol fan or anything.
I know. I think what's interesting, first of all, I think more broadcasts. I think you and I will reach out to all of our contacts on this because we have all the numbers. And we'll make sure that Stud Muffin is used more in SEC broadcasts this year. I think that's an underutilized term for folks on the air. They need to do a better job. All right, so who's officially in the playoff? Who you got? We both have Georgia, Alabama, and Texas. All right, is it because 5 means that probably Notre Dame doesn't get in if you pick 5 from the SEC? Because you got to go 1 ACC, 1 Big 12, 1 G5. You got to go at least 3 Big 10, if not a 4th, unless Michigan falls on its face or something like that. I mean, Penn State could also, I guess, fall on its face, but there's 3 or 4.
All right, talk me through it. So 3 for the Big 10. I would go with Ohio State for sure. I would go with Oregon for sure. And then it's that Penn State or Michigan or maybe both kind of a thing. Yep. Maybe Washington's sexy. Nope. Maybe USC has sex appeal. You're not feeling it.
I think Washington could finish outside of the top 10 in the conference.
Probably. I have a little faith in Jed Fish, but I'm not. I would not be surprised after what they've lost in DeBoer and.
I think USC's interesting. I would say, I can't believe I'm doing this, but watch out for Nebraska.
Oh God,
Iowa's going to be the same old Iowa, which is a very good defensive team.
Iowa gets hurt with this new league, and so does Wisconsin.
I agree. I think ultimately you are looking at Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and if one of them slips up and misses a spot, that's where you could open up a spot for a 5th SEC team.
I would say Michigan's the team that slips up. I think they're the vulnerable one. So
especially if they have a head-to-head loss to Texas, and Texas is the team vying for a spot.
Yeah,
you're going to put Texas.
So I'll say SEC will have Georgia and Texas and Alabama and Tennessee, and I'll go Missouri.
No Ole Miss. Okay.
No Ole Miss. I'm going to have them as a choke artist. They bother me. Kiffin, I never can bet on Lane Kiffin. He's too putsy for me.
Well, you've done this a long time.
Yes.
And there's every year there's a team that is that completely just self-destructs.
And I just think it's them.
Really? Okay.
I do. Because it's just Kiffin to me. He's putsy and futsy and awkward as hell. And I you would think it would probably lean more towards Missouri, but I think Brady Cook's too good. I think that the parts are too good. I'm
curious about the defense. So.
I'm with you. As far as the ACC representative, I'm gonna go with Louisville.
But it's just one though, is the point. It doesn't matter who it is if you're an SEC fan.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go Louisville is that team.
Tyler Shuck has to stay healthy, but yes, okay.
Okay. But you asked me.
I like Louisville a lot. I'm with you.
Big 12.
KSU.
I'm gonna go Kansas.
I love it.
Instead of KSU. And Lance Leipold, we trust. We all love Lancey boy.
True.
The group of 5, I will go.
Give me Liberty.
You have to, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
unfortunately, it's Liberty.
Yeah. I know we both have our problems with them, but they're probably going to get in.
I'm a big fan of pool boys.
Who isn't? I mean, when you look at your account and you owe the pool boy money, but you don't have a pool, there might be an issue.
It's Childers. It was for services rendered. Stop it.
There were services. Believe me, there were services and then some. And that's how they have all that Liberty money.
Things that were provided.
NIL services. Big time services left and right. But no, I think Liberty, right. I think they're in a good position, and certainly what they can do with hiring coaches and pumping money into that program in a league that's there for them to devour. I think they're in a good position. So who do we leave out?
So I think it's a Big 12 team. It's one ACC team.
Yeah.
It is one G5 team. That's 3.
Yes,
we've got 3 guaranteed SEC in our opinion: Alabama, Georgia, Texas. We've got I think there are 4 right now in the Big 10, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of them falls out, Michigan or Penn State. But the schedule for Penn State sets up very well. Notre Dame would have been a lock for me to get into the playoff because their schedule is actually pretty solid, like not too difficult for them. And I think they're very good. I think they have a chance to be, if Riley Leonard is healthy, one of their better versions of themselves. The problem is they're losing dudes. They're losing pieces that are critical. You lost your starting left tackle. They are going to be very good, but we are talking about razor thin margins here. And if
Notre Dame going to lose the opener, which I think puts them behind the
right, and so if they lose to A&M, all of a sudden you put a Tennessee resume at 10-2 up against a Notre Dame resume at 10-2. I might put Tennessee in. If it's Missouri at 10-2 up against Notre Dame, that's the problem. Missouri's only got 3 really big games, and they're big: A&M, Oklahoma, and Alabama. But there's a chance that that's one top 10 team on the schedule.
Yeah.
And if you lose that game on the road to Alabama, then the SOS is going to be difficult. So I agree. Tyler's an SEC, a Missouri fan, says I think strength of schedule for Missouri means they need to win 11 games. I think that's accurate. But 10-2 could absolutely get you in, especially with an SEC schedule. I'm going to go Georgia, Texas, Alabama. I'm going to go Ole Miss and Tennessee, and I think Missouri gets left out because of their resume, not because of wins and losses. Not because of wins and losses. The committee's going to put a 10-2 Penn State team in over them, or a 10-2 Notre Dame team over Missouri, and not because they're not good enough, but because they're going to try to spread it out.
If it's them, though, I think it's okay. If it's any other league that gets in over an SEC, watch how quickly Greg Sankey changes.
10-2 Kansas that didn't win their conference gets in over Missouri. Literally the border war. Yeah, literally.
Watch how fast we split to the 2-team.
In that light, I want to hear about your units, big guy. In that light, I want to know the most interesting position groups or units in this conference that you maybe don't know about right now.
Yeah,
but could decide things. For example, here's one for me: Tennessee's defense. They have one of the best defensive lines in America. I don't know what they have at linebacker, and I don't know what they have in the secondary, and I don't know about their depth. I don't know about Tim Banks as a coordinator. I think they have almost every piece to make a deep run this year. I don't know about their defense. If their defense is very good, then they could be a team that beats Alabama at home, goes 11-1, and makes a playoff run with a quarterback who's a great star.
Yeah.
I think that's a group, for example, a unit that I think is they're not going to be picked top 3 or 4. They're not a playoff team, but I think that's a unit that could decide things in the SEC that we're not talking about.
Yeah, if they're good on that side of the football, just good. They don't have to be exceptional. They, and better than average. They need to be good. But if they're a good defensive unit, I think their offense will be special. And I think that's a playoff team, like I talked about.
Yep.
I'm just curious as anything about the LSU defense. I'm really, really curious about Blake Baker and replacing Matt House and how that looks on that side of the football. They had the Heisman Trophy winner, and it was all for nothing because that defense was all-time bad. I saw them play a couple of times in person a year ago. It was astounding to see a team that was wearing those uniforms that was just out of place and miss assignments and just kind of dumb crap on that side of the football. They have a new coordinator. They've added some pieces in the portal. They have to be good. I mean, you got to think their offense will be fine. We saw Nussmeier. That game 1 is so interesting because USC and LSU are like looking into a mirror. I mean, both defenses sucked last year. Both guys had their quarterbacks take over in the bowl game and put up big numbers. Both coaches have something to prove in year 3. I mean, they are
Both
looking.
guys fired their defensive coordinators and hired somebody new.
Exactly. They're looking directly in the mirror at each other. Now, there's a new offensive coordinator at LSU too, because we saw Denbrock go back to Notre Dame, and now he's with Marcus Freeman. So it is going to be interesting to me. Like, it's year 3, Brian Kelly. There's a pressure there. I think people feel comfortable with the quarterback position after Daniels, who went number 2 in the draft, who won the Heisman. But the defense is the big question again. And have they addressed the problem? We'll find out against Miller Moss, I think.
So I think they addressed the problem from a coaching standpoint, because I do think Blake Baker, who automatically just like stepped into Missouri and instantly fixed their defense, I think he will do the job. The question is how good of a job, because the personnel, like, they lost 3 NFL defensive linemen. Harold Perkins is maybe the best off-ball or on-ball linebacker in the entire country.
Yeah.
But the secondary, they've tried all these different strategies. Like, Brian Kelly's like, oh, I'm going to go get, established veterans in the portal. That didn't work. I'm going to go get younger players in the portal. That didn't work. Now he's doing it through traditional recruiting, and that will probably work, but it's going to take time. I like Bo Davis. I like going and getting the defensive coaching staff. Like, they built a lot of dudes up on that defensive coaching staff, but I wrote them down as well because I like Nussmeier. I like the offense. I think they're fine. I think Brian Kelly's a very good coach, but the defense cannot, like, it was the worst defense in school history, the worst defense in the conference.
Bad, yeah.
Even if they're twice as good, that's still middle of the pack in the league. And so I just think you're asking a lot to fix a lot for the coaching staff. And that's why I don't think LSU makes it to the playoff. I'm
with you.
It's their defense.
Big question, though. That's certainly the one that I'm watching.
How about Texas A&M's offensive line? I think Texas A&M, I like everything about this team. I think the quarterback is going to be good. Connor Wigman. I think the defense is elite. I think the head coach is great. I like Colin Klein running the plays. I think he's a really good fit with Connor Wigman's skill set. But Texas A&M's offensive line has been the problem for like 65 years. So they've got to get the offensive line fixed. If they are good, I would be very, very careful around Texas A&M. They're going to be so good in November. And here's the reason I'm not picking Texas to be the championship game. A&M is going to beat them.
Thanksgiving.
A&M is going to beat
right?
Yes. A&M is going to beat them, guaranteed. Put it in stone, guaranteed. They will win that game. Kyle
if
Field.
They do, that's a huge ass deal, man.
It's big.
They will go. You talk about validation. Year 1, SEC, Texas comes in and just a middle finger back at them. That would be big.
9-2 Texas shows up with
be big.
They got a win to get in the SEC championship game, and A&M says no.
It would be big.
And Texas misses the playoff and the SEC championship game all at one time.
Be hot. Woo! It would be hot if you're an Aggie. Have to pour ice down their trousers.
But so they're going to be much better in November. But the only way Texas A&M can get maybe not 9 or 10 wins, but maybe the only way they are good enough to beat Notre Dame in week 1 and then on the road against Florida in week 3 before they kind of get into the meat of their schedule. You got to think they're going to lose a couple games early that maybe they're not supposed to as things come together for Mike Elko. But it's the offensive line that could cost them that. And that's not really a big test against Florida per se with their weakness on defense. But it's going to be if Notre Dame wins that game, it's because it'll be like a 17-13 game where the Texas A&M offensive line cannot establish anything against a very good Notre Dame front seven. So I think it's the Texas A&M offensive line that I think could change a lot of things in this conference.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I'm with you. If they click like you're saying, I think their quarterback is talented. I think their coach is not a complete
tool job.
Yes. Thank you.
Stud muffin, not a stud muffin.
Not very unstud muffiny. Their Jimbo always gave me the used car salesman vibe. I think they got a real coach now. I think the people in College Station knew that when he was there. They realized this guy had the stuff. So I think they beat Notre Dame and beat them kind of like comfortably, like 2 touchdowny kind of a thing.
I like it. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Where else you going here? You got anything else? Any other units? I want to hear more.
I don't think so. That was the big unit I was thinking about. Was
you're always thinking about a big unit.
I like the Cajun units.
Ole Miss's front seven.
That's
I think that's a really big one. If that front seven is as talented as on paper as it is, and it translates to the field, they got every other piece of the puzzle. The schedule sets up well. I think Ole Miss. It doesn't mean they can't lose a game here or there and all of a sudden trip up and miss the playoff. But that front seven is really critical. And if Ole Miss's defensive line with all those pieces and Walter Nolan and all the transfers and they built it up, year 2, Pete Golding, the whole deal. Ole Miss is going to be that's the thing that I think sets them apart from like other teams in their position. Like that's the difference between potentially Missouri and Ole Miss is that front seven. Oklahoma's offensive line's another one. Replaced all 5 starters, new coordinator, new quarterback, new conference, very difficult schedule. I think the Oklahoma offensive line, if it comes together quickly, that could mean some interesting games for Oklahoma. They play basically everybody, and they could be a spoiler at some point, but I'm going to go Oklahoma's offensive line. Who overachieves? Who's the – forget the teams we've talked about. Look at the – and you can include A&M, I guess, because I think they're going to overachieve. It sounds like you agree. But if you're looking at Auburn and Florida and Kentucky and South Carolina and that sort of middle tier, which in any other conference would be a very good group of teams, but here they're like, 10 through 13. Who do you actually? You guys know me. I like Florida. I think.
Yeah, I would be leaning towards Florida.
I like Florida.
Mertz is a lot better than people think. His numbers are a lot better than people think. That could be a team that I think everybody's like, oh, there's no reason to fire Billy Napier. It's all good. We've kind of hit a stride here.
Yep.
I could see that happening in starting week 1 against the Miami team that people feel pretty good about their offense and Cam Ward taking over. I think that would be a statement win.
Yep.
I think it's them. Like Arkansas, I don't have much hope that that's going to be saved. South Carolina to me peaked year 1.
That's bad.
Yeah, it is, but I think that's kind of the reality, and Shane became a victim of his own expectations. Probably not the best to beat Tennessee and South Carolina like the first year.
Oh, Clemson, yeah.
Or Clemson the first year, and then everybody's expecting that for forever, forevermore. So a victim of expectations. I think it's probably Florida. I really do. I don't. If you're hitching your wagon to Peyton Thorne, I don't like that wagon. So. Mississippi State, Lebby, no.
No.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt, no.
Kentucky,
no. Here's a good take from Steven. Steven says, it's going to be so much fun to watch what happens to the loser of the Florida-Miami game. One side will completely melt down. I don't disagree with you. I just think that Miami has a lot more opportunity on their schedule to bounce back, whereas Florida, there is no breaks. They got A&M coming to town. They got to play UCF. In the non-conference. UCF is good. And that doesn't include LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee on the road, Georgia, Texas. It is an incredibly difficult schedule. I just think they're going to pull an upset late in the year. I think probably LSU at home if I had to pick one. And I think they beat Miami, and I think they might beat Texas A&M, maybe.
I can see it.
I think they can get to 7. If they get to 7, that's a big overachievement there.
I could see it.
Which programs are searching for new coaches at the end of the season? Which ones have new coaches for any reason?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a firing. It could be Eli Drinkowitz is taking the Florida job. It could be any reason. How many coaches are changing?
The obvious one's Arkansas, even though I don't think it's justified, honestly, because they were you give me that look. But the program blows. They were they got blown out at home by Western Kentucky. Okay. Well, before he got there, before Sam Pittman takes over, they were absolute dog excrement. And I just don't think they get a lot of great support internally. I think Arkansas is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I guess you could say, why aren't you Ole Miss? Why aren't you? Well, look, I think Sam Pittman's done a good job of changing the expectation, which has got him in trouble.
That's the Shane Beamer thing. He won 9 games his first
100%,
year. And
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Hell, when he won 3 games in his first year in COVID, people peed their pants.
Yeah.
That's how bad Arkansas was. So are they in a way better position than they were when he got there? I don't think there's any question in my mind. I think they are.
The personnel, dude, is not good.
But I think he's in trouble. I think he's
well, here's a nugget for you. His buyout gets cut in half as soon as his overall record falls below 500. And so not counting COVID. So I think he's 2 games over 500 right now.
Yeah. I think the Oklahoma job is going to open too. I don't think Venables gets
They just gave him an extension. Where did that come from?
I think they fire his ass.
Hold on. So I think Mark Stoops is going to retire.
They gave him an extension as a hey, we're in the SEC. We're committed to this guy.
He won 10 games last year. They showed major improvement.
Wait till I'm telling you, I think they're going to come in and get hammered in the SEC and realize that he cannot be their coach. And a big buyout. I'm telling you right now. You asked me if there was some potential.
I hear you. Is that because they like a to go get somebody that they already have?
Because they realize that they
Who's
have
the
to
guy?
be better than Brent Venables. I don't know, but they have to be
Okay.
better than Brent Venables to win in this league. And now they got it. You can't just kind of skate by in this league now.
Here we go. Oklahoma pays $50 million to fire Brent Venables to go hire Lincoln Riley.
That would be awesome. That really would.
I
awesome.
love this take. I don't necessarily agree with
Oklahoma.
you. I don't necessarily agree with you, but I love this take. I think Mark Stoops retires at the end of the year. So I think Kentucky's open. I think Arkansas is open for sure. I think Billy Napier keeps his job. But if the Florida job comes open, here's what's going to happen. If the Florida job comes open, I think you are looking at another job in the SEC coming open because I think Lane Kiffin and Eli Drinkowitz are two of the names at the top of the list.
Makes sense to me. I don't think you're wrong. Yeah.
If Florida, then someone else, I think, is the key.
No, I think you're right.
I don't think Clark Lee gets fired, but I think it's possible. So I think that could happen.
Why should he? Like that?
I agree. I think
you can have Saban coach it, and they're
Shane Beamer is much closer to wearing out his welcome and on the hot seat than people realize, I think.
Oh, it'll happen soon.
I think
it'll happen soon. Yeah.
I think the shtick with the folks that make decisions is not jiving right now. If I had to guess,
it'll happen soon.
The Oklahoma take is real, dude.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
that is fun.
Just watch though. Watch them go 6-6 or 5-7, and then all of a sudden they realize that he can't do it. And Texas is going to win the national title.
They can't beat A&M, but they can win the whole damn thing.
Damn right.
Watch Texas go 10-2, beat Alabama or Georgia in the SEC title game, go on a run and win the national title, but they lost to A&M and Oklahoma.
That would be Texas in a nutshell too. That would be the most Texas thing that ever happened, and they're still the national champions.
That's so effing good.
Yeah.
All right. I'm glad we ended with Oklahoma fighting Brent Venables. I'm glad.
Done. I want you off this campus by 9:00 Monday morning.
So it's a tarmac firing. It's like not even back on campus. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. If you lose at home in your first SEC football game to the former coach you fired, Josh Heupel, it's not going to set a good tone.
No. Out.
Are you doing this for clicks?
No, I don't have any clicks. What do I have to click on?
Nothing.
I got nothing to click.
Nothing. I got you.
I'm clickless in Nashville. Clickless.
That sounds like a really strange old dating app
in
handle.
Seattle, yeah. Clickless in Nashville.
Clickless in Nashville. Oh man. Okay, so I'm gonna go 3 openings total. I think it could be Arkansas, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt, but I also think Florida and South Carolina are in there. And obviously, I'm gonna be side-eyeing Brent Venables in Oklahoma because my instincts with Brent Venables were when he was hired and then went through the first season that I don't know what this looks like long term.
Yeah.
Very good defensive coordinator, but I don't know what this looks like long term. Then they come into the SEC and the schedule's that hard.
I know. You get a little antsy.
Okay, all right, that's special. That's a special
antsy
take.
pantsy.
It's a very special take. Chris, where can everybody find you?
At Childers Radio on Twitter. Every Saturday on Mad Dog at noon Eastern, and then Monday through Friday on College Sports Radio on 84 on Sirius XM at 9 Eastern.
9 to noon Eastern.
9 to noon.
Are you and we'll have some more plans for you guys coming up for SEC Football Live. We'll give you those plans coming up soon, very shortly. So stay tuned at 440 Sports at Braden Gall. Stay tuned for all that stuff next week on the show. We'll make that announcement. So you're on Mad Dog during the games on Saturdays?
Yeah, I'm doing the in between. Fun. They're airing games at noon.
That's fun.
And then I'm doing that 4 hours in between before, and then they're going to air prime time.
Oh, that's the easiest radio. And I don't mean that in
I know. No, it'll be, trust me.
It's so much fun. Yeah.
Trust me. I know. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
All right. To all you guys in the comments, thank you so much. If you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up. We're back, folks. If you're listening on the podcast app, thumbs up, rate, review, subscribe. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. I do appreciate all you guys. I appreciate you, Childers, as well. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Otherwise, it's here, boys. Week 0, week 1 next week. We'll have a whole preview. We'll get to preview games coming up next week on the show. So other than that, thank you for listening. Have a good one, Childers. Peace and love, my guy. Peace
all right. See ya. Thanks, guys.
All right. We'll talk to you next week.